people in, right? Out of the waiting room?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, thank you. Let's call the meeting to order. I think I have to read this thing. This is the meeting of the Finance Committee of the NCAB. On Wednesday, March 29th, 2023, Governor Healy signed into law Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, an act making appropriations for fiscal year 2023, which includes a 2-year extension of the option for public bodies to hold remote meetings by suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, General Law, Chapters 38, Section 20. That action was effective immediately, extending the current option for remote meetings through March 31, 2025. So let's call the roll. Eric Beckerman, Paul Connor, Joe Reardon.
Here.
Barbara Cyril. Here. Elizabeth Childs is here. The chair is here. So we have a quorum. Okay. Our first item is the review of the draft of the FY24 county budget. And John, that's you, right?
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. If I would ask the chair's indulgence, joining me are Commissioner Shea and Commissioner Collins. Commissioner Stady may join by Zoom. They are posted. Commissioner Shea would just like to make some brief opening remarks, if you don't mind, Chairwoman. I
would be pleased. Welcome, commissioners. I couldn't see you in the picture. Now I see you. Welcome.
Well, we're just, this is the remnants of our meeting, and we're heading to a school meeting. So Commissioner Collins and I decided to say hello and kind of thank you folks for all you do. You know, the budget is a living, breathing document that we've spent a lot of time on, and it's a collective commitment to some of the changes we've made here in the last couple of years. And can I tell you that change comes easy? I'm not going to tell you that. But each year has gotten better. This year's better than last year. We want to do the best thing we can. We've implemented some of the best practices that we had recommended to us from the Abrahams Group and the Ripples Report. Our combined IT department, under the direction of our new CIO, Sam Evans, is spearheading initiatives to ensure our county has modern technological resources and services across all departments. In this budget, you'll notice a new department, which we're very excited about. It's the Department of Weights and Measures. We found a way to fund a Department of Weights and Measures. Every city and town in the Commonwealth, over 10,000 people, has to have an independent weights and measures person. Under 10,000, I believe they're part-time, and they share them from cities and towns. All of your oil trucks, all of your scales, all of your supermarkets have to be licensed and have their scales and other measures tested by full-time qualified people. We found a need in some of the smaller towns, and actually the 4 towns that have joined this collaborative already. We're going to supply the vehicle, the equipment, and the person who's going to go around and do weights and measures in these towns. Charge them somewhat of a fee because weights and measures is a paid proposition. I'm sure Weymouth, Quincy, Brookline, Milton, Dedham has independent standalone weights and measures. But already we've signed up Canton, Needham, Franklin, and Rentham to use the county weights and measure person. This is a regionalization program that I think we feel is really going to grow, and we're very excited about it. We're going to hit the ground running after the approval of this budget on July 1st. As of now, we have posted a position. We're going to make the position available to our existing employees. The person will have to go to school with the state and be trained, and it's under the auspices of Deputy Director Bill Buckley. So we want to. This is a microcosm or a smaller department that we think can be a boon to anyone. So if a town is their sealer should retire and they haven't replaced them, we can help them out. If they're too small to have a separate one, we'll be happy to go in and work with them. And again, they still can charge the revenue that goes with it, and we'll put some of it towards it. And I think we took some of the funding from the opera grant. No, we took it from just operating budget money. Yeah.
For the vehicle and the supplies, yes.
Okay, so we'll be up and running pending your approval by July 1st. And we want to continue along the budget process, and we thank you for all your efforts in serving the challenges of Norfolk County. But we're excited. We're going to have a very exciting subject that John's going to speak to you about Quincy Court. And it'll have long-time ramifications financially for us going down the road. It's been a long road, but the baby's almost ready to be born. But basically, Peter and I just want to say hello and say thank you, and we'll see everyone next week.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Collins, do you want to add anything?
All set. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Shea. We appreciate all that you do too.
Okay, we're cooking.
All right.
We'll go back to John. If we get out, we're going to a school committee meeting, so we're going to stay for a while, though.
Okay, wonderful.
Good afternoon, Chairwoman Childs. I would take your lead on what approach you wish me to deliver the draft FY24 budget. I'm prepared to go line by line of this 94-page document, or we can refer to a PowerPoint deck that I've used with the Norfolk County Commissioners and expedite that. Obviously prepared to go into any category of the budget you wish to go into. Your choice. Which way would you like me to go?
Let me ask the committee. What do you guys think? Barbara, Eric, Joe, you want a PowerPoint or you want to go line by line?
Let's start with the PowerPoint.
Good decision. I like that idea. Okay. All right. That sounds good, John.
All right. I'll try to follow the agenda as much as I can. There are a couple of items that float in and out in the PowerPoint, Dr. Childs.
Okay.
But I'm mindful that you have an agenda that also has certain waypoints. Bill, if you could just bring that into slide mode. The view, Bill. There we go. Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon, everyone. This PowerPoint is broken into three different sections. First is the county budget, a presentation of a balanced FY24 operating budget, as well as a proposed FY24 capital budget, and a brief view of the FY23 budget supplemental budget. We're going to touch on a Chapter 35 matter that the chairwoman has expressed an interest in relative to a March 1st letter to the Norfolk County Commissioners, from the Norfolk County Commissioners to the Register of Deeds. And then finally, as Commissioner Shea indicated, I'll be happy to give you an update on the Quincy District Court disposition and my recommendation to create a capital improvement fund. The first item on the next slide, Bill, this will be slide 3. Next slide. This is our budget schedule. As you can see, we highlighted last week as the commissioners voted on the FY24 budget. This afternoon, they took an amended vote to clean up a couple of items that had come to the county's attention since last Wednesday. So we have a revised number since last Wednesday. Looking ahead, we have an advisory board next week, and of course, again on May 17th for the final vote for the FY24 budget. This process did start on January 12th with the budget memo distribution to the departments and proceeded throughout pretty much the month of March with various presentations by the various departments to the commissioners. Following that last submission, I took all of the budgets and began creating a consolidated FY24 budget, which you will be seeing today. Next slide, Bill. Before we began, we assembled all the various budget requests and matching them against initial revenue estimates. The budget was out of balance by $1,095,925. This is where we started. Next slide, Bill. So the FY24 budget goals were very straightforward. We wanted to present a maintenance of effort budget. That was the message in my budget memo back in January. We want to monitor and adjust fluctuating revenue, which I'll get into in just a minute. We want to adjust or structure our budget to absorb the actuarial-based retirement costs. If Board Member Connors was on the call, he would affirm that I think it was last fall, the Norfolk County Retirement Board took a vote to change the method by which the calculated retirement benefits were done to a actuarial-based system, and it caused an increase in cost to Norfolk County. And that particular item is going to be absorbed over the next 6 years, I believe, as we come up to speed on that liability. We're going to present an opportunity to have the advisory board create a capital improvement fund. This particular item is important based on the Quincy District Court disposition that is looming. And finally, we're introducing, as Commissioner Shea indicated, a new regional services program, Weights and Measures. Next slide, Bill. So briefly, as you look at our revenue blend, these are the general county revenues. And I wanted to show you that overall, the county revenues are projected to increase in FY24. You can see in the far right-hand corner that the lines reflect primarily increases to court rental, county tax assessment, obviously, also the retirement system revision. I'll talk about that in just a minute. Our reimbursement from shared services, and then finally, appropriated general fund unexpended balances and weights and measures. The deeds excise and things like that are going down, I'll talk about those in just a few minutes, but I wanted to briefly touch on the court rental reimbursement. In FY24, we expect to resume our levels of reimbursement from the state after, as you probably know, undergoing some inactive times during COVID. This reimbursement, as you know, is at least a year in arrears. And consequently, in FY23, we didn't see the full reimbursement because we were still feeling the effects of low activity during COVID. As a result of the post-COVID time period, we're seeing an increase in activity from last year reflected in this court rental reimbursement increase. The county tax assessment, as you all know, is 2.5% above the county tax assessment per general law. The retirement system revision. Back in September during one of our meetings, we discussed forward funding the FY24 capital budget. It was a means to take a sizable surplus from last year and park it ahead. We're going to be using half of that to fund the capital project and the other half to fund this increase in the retirement system piece that I just spoke about. We are monitoring computer access fund. I'll talk about that in the next slide. The reimbursement from shared services income is primarily a CARES reimbursement that the county received as a result of expenses incurred during the pandemic. And the general appropriated unexpended balance, that is general law driven. $712,000 is 10% of the county tax assessment. That's chapter 35, I believe it's section 10. We are driven by law to take pretty much a forced reversion and apply it towards the next year's revenue blend. And then finally, you can see the weights and measures piece. We're projecting $87,500 in new revenue to sustain the full-time employee assigned to that program. Next slide, Bill. So in the next slide, 2 of 3, just a few points of interest. The registry transaction fee and the registry deeds excise are 2 very large revenue sources for the county. And in both cases, I'm concerned about the direction they're heading. The transaction fees, I'm actually going to reduce projections down to 2.4 based on activities to date. I'm monitoring the county's revenue collection along with our assistant treasurer, Joe Dioria, who produces monthly trial balances. Recent trial balances confirm what I think we all know, which is an economic slowdown is occurring. The activity at the registry has slowed considerably, and it's reflected in the revenue collections. The transaction fees are a main indicator of that. The deeds excise so far is leveling off at the projection that I had originally for FY23. It's a far cry from what we'd seen a year ago and 2 years ago when the economy and the housing boom was going strong. Those 2 accounts we're going to keep a very close eye on. You'll hear me talk a lot about revenue monitoring in this presentation. Given the uncertain economic view of things, we're trying to be responsible, but not overreact or overcorrect. Finally, the computer access fund. This peaked in FY13 at $861,000. This particular fund was projected at $200,000 for fiscal year 23. We will not achieve that number. We are likely to be well below it, and right now I'm bringing it down to 100,000 for next year. That last bullet is redundant to the statement I just made. We're seeing a large increase in court rental as a result of post-COVID resumption of reimbursable activity. Slide 8, Bill, please. Revenue 3 of 3. As I mentioned, I'm going to take 425,000 of the $1 million forward funded account and fund that with FY20 as for our FY24 cost to cover the increased retirement expenses. The reimbursement shared services income is increased 194,000 above our benchmark, and as I mentioned, that's our CARES reimbursement coming in. We're also increasing our general unexpended from 600,000 to 712. I just mentioned that pursuant to Chapter 35. It's Section 30. I thought it was 10. It's Section 30. Our new revenue is 87,500 to cover weights and measures. And our new information technology department will charge back 359,500 from Deeds Excise for registry-related technology expenses to the Registry of Deeds. Next slide, Bill. Slide 9, please. Here we are. So how do we achieve a balanced budget? As I mentioned, the department has presented their budgets to the commissioners between February 7th and March 8th. We relied on a policy of goals, past funding levels, and assignment of costs where most appropriate. We adhere to Mass General Law, Chapter 64D, Section 12, to balance the Registry of Deeds budget against prior year spending. Please note, members of the Finance Committee, as in FY23, we'll need to revisit the Registry of Deeds appropriation in September when we first meet for FY24 for any additional adjustments in this particular account as a result of actual FY23 spending. As I sit here today, I can assure you that number will be going up in September because the appropriation you see in the budget does not cover the cost of living allowance for the newly ratified Registry of Deeds union agreement. They haven't incurred the expense yet, but by September they will, and we'll make the adjustment then. Excuse me. We utilize increased revenue from sources shown previously to offset these declining registry revenues. But there are a few cost areas that shouldn't come as surprises to many. If you're familiar with public budgets, you see group insurance costs continuing to rise. In FY24, we're projecting 4.5%, or $273,238. That may seem like a lot, but I happen to know many neighboring towns are looking at double-digit increases for next fiscal year. Mayflower and our good friend Tom O'Brien are very cognizant of the impact of large spikes and troughs, if you will, in some of these costs. They try to smooth that out over a series of years to make sure that the increases when they do come are not staggering. While 4.5 is a lot of money, it's relatively consistent with what we've seen in the past few years. The contribution to the retirement per the Norfolk County Retirement Board is increasing our contribution by 7% as shown. And finally, if you're familiar with utility costs, everybody is facing this both at a personal level as well as professional and public. We're tracking a 24% increase from FY23 to FY24 for all utility costs across the board. And that cost is up 153,152 since FY22. Slide 10, please, Bill. So now we're going to get into the department budget notes. I'm happy to go to any specific budget within the document that's been presented to you, version 3. But I wanted to help expedite some of the highlights and items by department, specifically the Wallace and Recreational Facility. They're increasing cart rental fees, which will increase revenue by about $13,000. And I'm recommending additional capital funding for course upgrades. In the past, they have been using $80,000 a year. As many of you know, through the commissioners, nearly $1 million in Wallace and Recreational Facility improvements have been made in the last couple of years, much of it on the recreational side, including paving, playgrounds, and pickleball and tennis courts, lighting, and so forth. This funding is for the course. We have to focus more on making sure the course is up to speed and good for play as many months in a year as possible. We're also going to look to use ARPA funding for the new course restroom. In FY23, you all appropriated $75,000 for a course restroom. After study of that particular benefit, we see that it's likely going to cost more, not surprising. But if it can be pulled off, we're going to try to assign it to ARPA. So that's coming off the county's books and onto the grant. Commissioner's Office, as Commissioner Shea just mentioned, we're looking to start a program on July 1st that will welcome the first phase of the 4 county communities listed there. Each of them have already signed a letter of interest. We're working on an intermunicipality agreement, which they will be signing very shortly. They're all very anxious to join the program and help the county, and have the county solve their problems for them. Our operating budget increases reflect the new supervisory duties for the county director and the assistant director. As some of you may know, the technology division now falls under the county director. And since we hired the CIO last fall, there's a salary collision, which the county commissioners have asked in this budget to be addressed. There's a salary increase for the director. The assistant director similarly is taking on a new role to oversee weights and measures, and also has a corresponding salary increase to reflect those duties. ARPA funding under the Commissioner's Office is likely to follow next. I'll get to the ARPA at the end, Dr. Childs, but I just wanted to briefly point out that the Commissioners really strongly felt from the beginning that ARPA needs to be communities focused first. Most of the monies have gone out to the communities. Few dollars have been spent on county assets. That's about to change, and you'll hear a little bit more about that in just a minute. IT. So in the budget, you'll see under the IT budget, we have broken out the costs into 2 different categories to track the respective cost centers of registry and all others. Because with the registry, we can charge those costs back to deeds excise, and we want to be able to say from an auditing perspective, we clearly understand the cost center use. They're planning new capital costs for FY25. You won't see anything right now in 25 for IT. But they are looking to join that process in FY25 for improved automation and system upgrades. Their operating budget salary increases is also for a new Assistant Chief Information Officer. This will be an internal promotion. This individual will create a new line of supervision and project management skill, and also organizational redundancy. Funding for all county department needs for hardware, software, and IT supplies is now hosted in the IT department. This is part of the Abraham's Group recommendation, as Commissioner Shea just indicated. This budget is the first fully formed consolidated IT department, and the budget for that particular department reflects that. Excuse me. Next slide, Bill, number 11. Facility maintenance. The main point here, as I mentioned, we're looking to start to pivot ARPA funds in the direction of our facilities. The county commissioners approved today a study to be performed by an architect to look at Dedham Superior Court and Dedham District Court for sizable facility improvements. We're going to have this architect give us a cost estimate to provide improved outside HVAC circulation at Dedham Superior, and also over across the street, installation of a new building management system that can be scaled up for all facilities to control HVAC and other energy-driven systems. As we think about the courts that we operate, clearly having a modern automated building management system to handle and control all building systems will give us the greatest yield for energy efficiency of any measure we can think of. So as soon as the architect is done with those studies, they'll report back to us on what the projected costs are. I'll present the options to the commissioners to consider funding them through ARPA based on the cost or not. But that's the next step through facilities. The Aggie, clearly in FY24, they're trying to achieve a balance between in-district and out-of-district tuition needs to meet net school spending. Over $200,000 in capital spending towards various systems are shown in the capital plan for public address system, administration building storefront, electric vehicle charging stations, and the dairy barn boiler. The agricultural school is asked under ARPA for $500,000 for HVAC improvements and also funding for premium pay for eligible staff. Those items will be placed under consideration once the ARPA projects mentioned above come into focus and we size up what is the available money for these projects going forward. But right now, that's the ask from the agricultural school. The registry of deeds was reduced $638,000 from the request submitted by the register for the FY24 process. This new funding level does meet the spending obligation plus 2.5%. We're monitoring revenue collections. The market activity has slowed due to economic factors, including interest borrowing rates. Our on-site, fully staffed IT services are planning and coordinating 2 impactful working groups into FY24. The first one will be to evaluate the Brown Tech database for possible upgrade or replacement. And a second optimization group will focus on the county financial systems, Infinite Vision, for time and attendance applications and other budget development optimization. The latter, I will point out again to Chairman Shea's remarks, is a feature of the Abrahams Group recommendations. Slide number 12. At this point, Dr. Childs, I've concluded the brief presentation of the draft FY24 county budget. I'm happy to go into the capital piece if you would like, but I'll take your direction at this point.
Why don't we take a moment and just talk to let's the committee talk about operating budget questions or concerns, or ask for any expanded information they might need. So
Absolutely.
why don't we stop there for that first, then we'll go to capital.
And if you don't mind, Dr. Childs, I'd just like to recognize Commissioner Stady has joined us.
Great. Welcome, Commissioner. And also Mr. Beckerman has joined us. So we've got, yes, okay. All right. I think we're still missing Paul Connors, though, I'm afraid. Okay. All right. How about from the committee, questions or comments or expanded information you need on the operating budget? Barbara.
You talked about additional funds for the retirement liability, but at least in the budget currently, the funding for OPEB is minuscule. And what is our plan for OPEB? Because we got about 15 years and we're supposed to be fully funded, and I don't see us doing it at $100,000 a year.
Thank you for that question. First of all, if I could understand it, you coupled OPEB with the healthcare. Is your question more about OPEB, Barbara?
My question is about OPEB.
Okay, sure. So I have a little bit of understanding of the OPEB liability concerns across the state. I happen to live in a community that is hyper-funded OPEB to the point where we'll close our obligation in about 4 years. After speaking to our auditors a year ago here in Norfolk County, it became clear to us that auditors and bonds people that obviously give us bond funding for various projects like the schools, their main test right now, Barbara, is are you making regular and recurring payments towards your obligation? And the answer is yes. While the $100,000 may seem minimal, the fact is they are not scared off by the fact that the money that we're contributing to it doesn't offer a payout figure. I don't know if you're aware of this, Barbara, but 2/3 of the communities in Massachusetts are in the same exact boat. This obligation has been accumulated over a series of generations, as I'm sure you know. Many communities cannot afford to sink $1-2 million of their operating account towards this liability. So as long as the obligation is being funded, our bonds people and our auditors are satisfied that we're meeting minimal requirements. One footnote to that, if I could, earlier this year when we were sitting on a large surplus, I had made a brief recommendation to contribute additional funds beyond that $100,000 that you just talked about. I believe it was Commissioner Stady recommended that at the time we defer that cost because we didn't know where things were going relative to the economy, and it might be best to pull that money back. In retrospect, that was a very wise recommendation. I'm not recommending putting any more money towards the obligation, given the uncertainty of our cash flow moving into FY24. So while I share your concerns about the level that we're contributing, I'm assured by our auditors and our bonds holders that they're quite happy with what we're doing. They're not concerned, and we're in company, if you will. I won't call it good company, but we're in company with 2/3 of the other communities in Massachusetts.
What's our OPEB liability right now?
Approximately $53 million.
And what's our, do we have an unfunded liability on the retirement side?
I cannot recall, but I'd be happy to look at the GASB report and get back to you if you would like to.
That would be great. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oh, actually, I think I can guess, and if Paul was on the call, he might affirm it. The unfunded liability, this is just a guess, Barbara, forgive me for going out there, but I think through the increased actuarial payments that Norfolk County is making, if I recall correctly, when Paul was here in the fall, making this payment over the next 6 years closes the retirement board liability that we're carrying. But
Oh, okay.
That's a recollection that's not quite rooted in.
We'll have it by next week.
Yeah, I can certainly
I
square
think-
that with Paul.
I think, talking to Paul recently, if I can, you're right. This will close the gap on the unfunded within 5 to 6 years.
Okay, so retirement then will be off our plate at least as an unfunded liability. Terrific.
Right.
That's great.
Right. That's right.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Eric, Joe, Eric?
Yeah, I do have one question.
Okay.
Hello, everybody, and I'm sorry I was a little bit late today. I had a major car accident literally in front of my house.
Ooh,
Are you
So, yeah,
okay?
so if you see lights behind me, that's the reason why. Anyway, I guess the question I have is on one of the slides, John, and forgive me, I don't remember which slide number. I'm going to say it's 11 or 12. You had some of the highlights of the Aggie and their request. And one question I have is I noticed there was a statement that said they were working to change the tuition, in county and out of county tuition to be a little bit more in line, I think. Maybe it wasn't, where was it?
It's slide 11, Bill.
Is this, yeah, the first one where designed to achieve balance between the in-district and out-of-district tuition to meet net school spending per DESI. My question is, I know last year they redid the tuitions. Was there some sort of decision made by DESI to the Aggie that there was a problem, or is this just a proactive change they want to make?
Well, I think there are two sides to that answer. The first is, when I first arrived here 2 years ago, speaking with Rick Fitzpatrick at the time, it was clear to me that with his experience, Eric, balancing the tuition between in-district and out-of-district students is a perpetual challenge. The out-of-district tuition is obviously much higher than in-district. If you, for any reason, lose that balance and you suddenly see out-of-district children leaving the system, the financial hit that the agricultural school sustains is considerable and in some cases impactful. And that doesn't ever go away. So I think the superintendent has to always keep that in mind. But to your second point, yes, in February, the schools were notified by the state that they were not meeting net school spending. And John Wallace is on the call, so I'll take a brief moment to give you my take, but if you have a deeper dive answer, John, feel free to contribute to it. But basically, DESI said, you've got to spend more money or look into other models. I know the schools had a conversation with them about how the net school spending model is not really working for the agricultural school. But I think they may have some answers to share with you all relative to a waiver that basically has the state understanding that the tuition bill that goes out has two funding lines on it, one for tuition, Eric, and one for infrastructure or capital costs. And DESI is now recognizing that bifurcating that number may help the schools achieve net school spending by taking out the borrowing piece or the capital piece. John, if I'm mistaken in any of that statement, you feel free to clean it up. But I think having that waiver in hand gives the school a smoother path ahead to achieve that balance and allow net school spending to be met. John Wallace, did I capture everything there?
Yeah, you certainly were substantially correct in what you said. We did propose a waiver to DESI, and DESI did accept the waiver suggestion that we had. We've just refiled our end of year 22 report, which includes our FY23 budget. And we believe, based on the calculation we've done, that it's going to be accepted by DESI, and that going forward, since we've been given the right to treat differently out of county capital contributions, tuition that relates directly to capital, we should not have a problem with net school spending going forward, given the current mix of out of county and in county students. The only thing that would cause a problem would be to have even more out of county students than we currently have, which would mean that the in county contribution would be lower and we would have that problem. But we don't see that as a problem. Our cushion in FY23 was over $200,000. And we anticipate even bigger excess from minimum net school spending in FY24's budget, the one that you guys have, given the waiver that they've granted us, or given the treatment, I should say, that they've granted us.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen.
Pleasure.
Any other questions, Eric?
No, I think I'm good for right now. I'm sure I'll have more later on.
Okay, all right. Are we ready as a committee? Should we go on to capital next? Should we move into the capital? Go ahead, Barbara.
This is more of just a general question. After the consolidation of IT and the register had some significant questions about having staff on site, which I know we are doing, to the best of your knowledge, has the changes been accepted relatively well by the register, and has it been working well for the registry?
Thank you for the question, Barbara. I think I'd characterize it as something that's still under construction. We hired our CIO in November, Sam Evans. He's a great fit. He has a lot of work to do. As you mentioned, he sits at the registry every single day. He attends weekly meetings with registry staff. He also keeps notes and agendas of all that correspondence. So in the event the Register of Deeds, for example, cannot be at the meeting, he can always fall back on what was the content discussed and what are the open items. We're not here to say that everything is working great. We understand that we have a lot of work to do to achieve an ideal service bureau that benefits every angle or every corner of Norfolk County. I've asked Sam to obviously put service first. That's the most important thing. I think he's got a great staff. I'm very happy with the people that are over there. It's important that not just the Registry of Deeds realize that they're there for their benefit, but I have to also tell you other corners of the county, as I mentioned, including the golf course and some of the underserved departments, are seeing the benefit of this consolidation. I think it's working quite well. I know it's going to take some time to achieve the goals that we've laid out. I'm going to measure that answer in years, Barbara, if I could be honest with you. I think it'll probably take 2 to 3 more years before we see the full-blown benefit of this consolidation. And that's consistent with my experience, having watched it play out at the state. Change is difficult for everybody, as the saying goes, but we're not here to exacerbate problems or create any new problems. We're here to service problems. And I think Sam and his team are doing an exquisite job, and I think the commissioners are very happy with them too. To the extent that the registry may not be happy or satisfied with that service, I defer to them for a more clear answer. He's an independent elected official. I won't speak for him, but I can speak for the team that's in place and the work we're doing so far. I'd say so far they're exceeding my expectations.
One more question about the IT. In your Registry of Deeds PowerPoint, you talked about I don't know, some redoing or something of Brown Tech, and if I remember correctly, the consultants came in and basically said that the Brown Tech system was incredibly old and could basically fail at any time. Are we trying to piggyback off of that, or is this just a kind of belt and suspenders to use it until we can get something better in place?
I don't think it's either one. How about that?
Okay. All right, that's fair.
I think what they're trying to do is Brown Tech is a very pervasive software system as we understand it. It covers virtually every corner of the operations of a very, very active organization. And I think what technology is realizing, and the Ripples Group recommended this, is take a breath, step back. The software is working, but we recognize that the leadership behind that particular code is aging and aging out very quickly. It doesn't have a plan, a succession plan, if you will, for leadership, and we have to be mindful of that. But as the system currently works, and I mentioned this in the slide deck, Barbara, this optimization team, which will be headed up by the new deputy CIO for Brown Tech, is going to start looking at building all the bricks towards what will this new model look like. Can we take elements of that code or that program and use it effectively going forward and build new pieces around it? I'm far from a technology expert, but what I've heard from Tom Innes at Ripples and others is You want to build a system that has multiple layers of usefulness and redundancy. Nobody buys a COTS product anymore that solves all your problems. What a lot of places have done over the years is they buy COTS and then they customize it. They're all buying SaaS products, software as a service. And if you can layer those in and create levels of redundancy, that's a successful program on a whiteboard. And that's the program that's going to start July 1st with these optimization teams. I don't think it's fair to say that they're looking to belt and suspenders Brown Tech. They're going to utilize it. They're going to work with it. If it can be optimized, if parts of it can be used going forward effectively, we'll do that. But if we need to also incorporate new elements that Brown Tech can't sustain or evolve because of their code restrictions, we'll do that. But I'm going to allow the technology people to build up a plan over a period of time after studying the user needs, the marketplace items, as well as what other registry systems in Massachusetts are doing. And that's not just county systems, Barbara, that's the state systems, because we want to be collectively mindful of what we're investing in. And it's going to take a couple of years. And that goes back to my earlier question. I want to give them some time to get their hands around it. It's a big project. We're hoping for a buy-in from all corners so that this team can do it right. And it will include a lot of users from the registry as well to contribute their subject matter expertise. So a long answer to your question. Great question, by the way. It's just going to be a while, but I do think they're going to utilize the software that they have, optimize it as much as possible. And I'm going to let them tell us which direction is the most sensible way to go. I don't want to suggest that we're going to replace Brown Tech whole scale. I think it's too early to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions from the rest of the Finance Committee? Okay, Barbara, I'm so glad you brought that up because I just wanted to remember, John, we have asked at the Norfolk County Advisory Board meetings for an update on how the IT stuff is going. So I'm wondering if we shouldn't make sure we put that on somewhere in your presentation on next week.
I'll speak to the chairman about that. We're also mindful of the time the advisory board has in any given meeting. We received an update back in, I think it was January at the Aggie. We'll see if the chairman is inclined to receive another update. I hear you, though.
Yeah, I think that's a good thing to get on our radar. If not for this meeting, the next one. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
All right. Okay. I think, should we go to capital budget, guys? Is that our next step, you think? Then before we move into item number 4, which is the chapter 35 issue, should we talk about the capital budget first? Okay. All right. Can we move back to you, John, to the PowerPoint for capital?
Absolutely. If you don't mind, I'm going to layer in the ARPA too, just to have the full
Yes,
picture.
that would be great.
Bill,
Yep.
Bill, we're on slide 12.
Okay.
So our FY24 capital plan is centered around a modified approach to funding capital in FY24. In FY20, earlier this year, the advisory board approved a $1 million forward funding account for capital. But I'm now going to, as I said, bifurcate that. We're going to assign $575,000 for capital needs in FY24. The balance will be used, as I mentioned, to offset the retirement contribution. If you go to slide 13, Bill, this will give the committee people hopefully a view of where our plan is. I hope this is, yeah, that came out pretty good, I think. Again, we're looking to spend $575. I'll go through these quickly. The Wollaston recreational facilities looking for $20,000 for cedar fence replacement, $50,000 to replace the fuel pump at the maintenance shed, and $125,000, for the course upgrades. Weights and Measures is looking for $50,000 for startup equipment. And also, let's move down. Facilities is just looking for $7,000 straight up to replace tools. It's been a while since they've upgraded their tool chest. Engineering is looking for $38,000 for new robotic stations, as well as $7,000 for office equipment such as chairs, desks, and partitions. The agricultural school is looking for $63,000 for technology upgrades, $120,000 for a PA system upgrade, $45,000 for an administration building storefront replacement, $40,000 for EV stations, new EV charging stations, electronic vehicle, and finally a dairy barn office boiler for $10,000. That's your total of $575,000. I did want to put a note on here that don't misread the fact that information technology is zero here. They'll be back in FY '24 once they get their hands around their looming needs for technology upgrades. As I pivot over to the final right-hand column, Dr. Childs, you'll see that we're projecting some ARPA-related expenses. Members of the Finance Committee may remember when the ARPA award was accepted, the commissioners, agreed to take 3% of the award and assign it to administration and county projects. I want to footnote that it is by far the lowest administrative cost of all the counties in Massachusetts. The cities and towns are getting an incredible value for running the ARPA program. And the county commissioners are still seeing the benefits of having cash on the table to do certain projects, including a $250,000 set aside for the new restroom on the golf course, $20,000 for the Dedham District Court, and excuse me, hold on one second. I want to just always like this.
Bill, can you flip us back to the ledger sheet, please? Can you flip us back to the,
Slide 13, Bill.
thanks. Thanks, okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
And then 20,000, as I mentioned, for the Dedham District and Dedham Superior Court ARPA projects. I talked about those earlier. We're also looking at a program with the Alzheimer's Association. They came in for a presentation to the commissioners a month or so ago. They've been hit hard as a result of COVID. Their fundraising has been severely impacted, and they're looking for some funding from ARPA to help jumpstart their giving campaign this fall. As many of you probably know about the Alzheimer's Association, they have a major fundraiser here in Norfolk County out of Foxborough, usually in the fall of every year. This is a program that's under construction, but looming as a potential item. The Treasurer's Office is looking for a financial literacy program, and we're looking for $1.25 million to be attributed to the outside air handler at Dedham Superior Court and $100,000 for the BMS system at Dedham District. The schools have put forth a request for $250,000 each for the plant science HVAC unit upgrades and the Kemp Hall upgrades. $15,000 each for the McFarland building management systems and the Avery Hall units and controls. Excuse me, I said $15,000 for Kemp Hall, $10,000 for McFarland, and then $152,000 request for premium pay for eligible staff. So right now, the proposed ARPA budget for the upcoming fiscal year is approximately $3.124 million. That's subject to appropriation, if you will, by the county commissioners. I can't say that will all be approved, but it's in their sights. That is our capital and ARPA update for FY '24.
Great, thank you.
My
Okay,
pleasure.
any questions from the committee about the capital money? Okay, good, okay. Okay, at this point, why don't we skip to the, maybe we should take out of order the agenda items and do number 5 first before we go back to number 4 here. Does that make sense? John, isn't that next on your PowerPoint presentation?
Sure, yeah, that'd be great.
Okay,
Yeah,
let's
that's
do
fine.
that. Let's go to the update of the sale of the Quincy District Court, and then we'll back up to number 4.
So that'll be screen 14, Bill. Slide 14. Thank you, Bill. As you may know by now, because you were all given certified letters, the Norfolk County Commissioners have agreed to sell the Quincy District Court to the Commonwealth for $10.4 million. The Commonwealth and the county have scheduled a public hearing on this for April 19th in the Quincy the Quincy Council Great Hall Chambers. We expect to close on the sale on or about June 30th, 2023. The Commonwealth expects to utilize our resources to operate the facility as of July 1st, 2023, until such time as they vacate the building. The Commonwealth is currently expecting to complete the design study of this new Justice Center by the end of 2023 and proceed to construction documents and bidding. Consequently, the construction is expected to begin in early 2025 with completion by 2028. There's a lot going on in this particular project. I don't want to belabor your time this evening. I think it's best if I just dive into any questions you might have about that particular project. But believing that there will be a windfall coming to the county, the next slide discusses the Capital Improvement Fund. So Chairwoman Childs, maybe it's
That's-
best if I just answer questions about the property and then we can move into the capital improvement fund.
Yeah, any questions about the property before we talk about the capital improvement fund?
Yeah, I have a quick question. John, can you go back to that slide for 1 second?
14, Bill. And thank you. $14, Bill. Thank you. Go ahead, Eric.
Let me just, okay, if the county's expecting to close on the sale on or about June 30th being the fiscal year end, does that change anything if it comes in on June 30th versus July 1st? As
No.
far as how we book the money?
No, because when the money comes in, it'll just be deposited into the general fund.
But if it gets deposited to general fund on June 30th with no action, wouldn't it just then end up in the unexpended balances?
Correct.
Okay, and then we can take an action at that later date on that. All right, I'm just trying to
You're
wrap my head
absolutely-
around that date. That's all.
You're correct. It becomes unassigned general revenue. That's correct.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's the only question I had.
Yep.
Great. All right, I think we're ready to go to the capital improvement fund conversation then.
Okay, great. As Commissioner Shea pointed out, we're still very mindful of all the recommendations the Abrahams Group report made. And one of them was the county ought to consider creating a capital improvement fund. Chapter 35, section 28B, subsection H, subsection I, allows for this provision. Incidentally, if you were to read the rest of this section, I believe it's the one following this, it talks about how a county can create a stabilization fund. We already have one of those. That work is done. This language is specifically calling out the function of creating this fund through the advisory board. So this evening, I'm presenting it to you for your consideration. I'm looking to activate the capital improvement fund with an appropriation of $1,000 by the advisory board next week, so as to create this account. I think the thing that is most interesting that you should be advised on is how the money can, any monies going in or any monies coming out must be defined or approved by a 2/3 vote. So as future boards and commissioners think on this particular action, those are the strategies behind moving money into a capital improvement fund. For those of us familiar with local government, this is a very, very common tool. This is where you put funds for large capital projects, CapEx, if you will, that doesn't necessarily need to be bonded. It's inside levy money, if you're familiar with that term. This is a place where, for the most part, it's safe harbor. It's used usually for one-time capital improvement items. And as far as I'm concerned, it's a perfect place to land any portion or all of the upcoming Quincy District Court sale.
Questions or concerns from Eric, Barbara, thoughts about this?
I think it sounds like a great idea, to have a little, not that $10 million is little, I don't mean to imply that, but, to know that you have that flexibility, it gives you flexibility. And I think that's a good thing, but it requires a 2/3 vote. So, we've got to have a really strong belief that what we're doing here is correct. So, I think it's certainly my initial thoughts are that it's a great idea.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would agree. I think that's an excellent idea, taking that money and putting it aside for capital improvement. The 2/3 vote, I mean, is so, John, it basically works like a stabilization fund.
That's exactly right. It's the same
Okay, so-
statute. Eric.
So the 2/3 vote of the advisory board in order to use it, so we'd have to come up with, we would have to look at more like, I think, a little bit more, not more planning, but continue the type of planning we're doing now. So at the beginning of each fiscal year, we have an idea on X number of projects that we want to do, that we want to draw down from that fund, so the advisory board can meet. This isn't a pay as you go type thing. So that's the only drawback to it, is that, we would have to have some sort of it's not like if, a wall falls down in a building, you can take the money out of here to fix the wall. You have to get the advisory board together for a 2/3 vote. So, and John, one question about the 2/3 vote for this, is that a 2/3 physical vote or 2/3 weighted vote?
It doesn't say, Eric.
Okay, I'm just curious because, you know, if we have a situation where we have to call, let's say, an emergency NCAB meeting, and we only have 10 communities that join on, is it 2/3 of those 10 communities, or is it? I mean, you have to have a quorum either way, I assume, but I'm just trying to wrap my head around the whole weighted versus,
Yeah.
you know. But that's a conversation for another time. I might be getting a little too deep into that because that's, you know, but
One
I think
footnote
I think adopting this is definitely in the county's best interest, no question.
Thanks, Eric. One footnote for the Finance Committee to realize, the Abrahams Group recommended that the county put aside up to 20% of its omnibus, I always use that word, of its annual operating budget towards stabilization. And I believe the last time I looked at that in September, you were over 18%, 18.6%. So you're approaching
Oh,
max contribution, if you will, against our policies for stabilization. In the event we encounter years ahead where we see future surpluses like we have in the last 2 years, capital improvement would be a nice place to start putting some of that surplus as well.
agreed.
Yep.
Okay, so I wonder if, John, if we could hold for 1 second, I wonder if we should take a motion. Well, or if we should maybe just have a consensus. Well, we could take a motion to vote on a recommendation to the whole NCAB about this.
Funny you should mention that. We have a slide that might help you along that line.
That would be great.
I
Thank
was
you,
just
John.
gonna do that.
You can pull up slide number 16.
Okay,
I'm also going to introduce an item that we haven't yet talked about, which is the Registry of Deeds Collective Bargaining Agreement, which was ratified by the commissioners today. And I'll talk about that briefly. But we're proposing 5 motions this evening, Dr. Childs, for your committee to consider.
perfect.
First would be the FY24 county budget. The second is the memorandum of understanding with the union. The third, relevant to the capital improvement fund. The fourth is the capital budget. And then finally, we have not yet talked about it, is the FY23 supplemental needs. So we can easily pick off number 1, number 3, and number 4 at this time if you so desire.
I think we should while it's fresh in our minds. Okay. So
Okay.
let's start with motion number 1. Is anybody willing to move that?
I will make the motion to take the fiscal 24 county budget as presented by the director on this day, April 5th, 2023, in the amount of $36,214,330 under advisement.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. Okay. I think we have to do a roll call vote. Sorry, my apologies, everybody, for this. Any further discussion? Okay, Mr. Beckerman,
Aye.
Mr. Reardon,
Aye.
Barbara Searles,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, could I have a motion for number 3?
I will make a motion to create, in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 35, subsection 28B, sections H and I, a capital improvement fund.
Second.
Okay, thank you, Barbara. Okay, any further discussion? All right, let's roll call. Eric,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay,
Okay, and
motion number 4.
4, I will make a motion to approve the fiscal 24 county capital budget as presented by Director Cronin on this day, April 5th, 2023, in the amount of $575,000.
Second.
Okay,
Second.
thank you, Barbara. All right, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, we're unanimous on that. Okay, let's move back. So we're gonna recommend all of these to the NCAB. Okay,
Dr. Childs, the slide deck that I had ends here at this point. We do have a couple of items to cover before we get to the chapter 35 item. If I could help expedite a couple.
go right ahead.
I'd ask Bill to pull up the FY23 supplemental request. It's
Oh,
very
yeah, we can take, let's take that first. Okay, no problem.
in by. It's 1 page. It's very brief.
Okay.
Bill, you're sourcing the FY 23 supplemental budget that I'd sent you earlier.
Got that there, Bill?
Can you not see my screen?
No problem. We're working on the supplemental.
Yeah, can you not see the screen?
No,
Oh.
we see the thing that says end.
You still have the PowerPoint up, Bill.
Oh, that's not good.
What do you say? That's not good.
That's all right, Bill. We'll forgive you this time.
I know, that's weird. Sometimes if you screen share. Okay. How about now?
There we
There you
go.
There we
That's
go.
it.
Bill, shoot it
Okay.
down. If you could just reduce the view, Bill, it's a little big. Thank you. So this particular supplemental is very brief. It covers both supplemental needs and transfers. For the Finance Committee's awareness, back in January, after our last meeting, we left a balance of $308,671.87. This afternoon, I'm asking for 4 supplemental draws. We need to pay some bills from FY 22 amounting to $2,100. 2 line items are going to require $300 at the recreational facility and $100 at the treasurer's office respectively to cover projected longevity pays for FY 23. And then finally, this is the $1,000 that I'm recommending be used to activate the capital improvement fund. After these particular supplemental items are expended, we're going to likely hold on to a $305,171.87 balance. It's my goal to allow that to revert into FY 24 to bolster our reserves and our need for cash next year. So I'm hoping not to use any more of that money. Transfers that we have 2. Engineering is looking to move $34,500 from permanent salaries into contractual services to cover unexpected expenses associated with an old project Patrick Higgins has described to us in engineering, totaling $34,500. The Registry of Deeds submitted a request today to move $15,000 from Deeds Excise into temporary salaries to cover costs of temporary contracts for Mr. Richard Serrani and Mr. Gary Lubin, who provide services to the Registry of Deeds. So in total, those items are $53,100, also known as motion number 5. That sounds like a song, I think, motion number 5. But
Okay.
I'm happy to answer any questions on that, on those items. I do obviously sometimes put observations ahead to keep people aware of what's going on. I think I've covered most of those, including the Quincy District Court public hearing. I'm going to be monitoring FY 24 revenues very fervently starting in July. And I'm not recommending, as I mentioned to Ms. Searle earlier, any OPEB contributions in FY 23. And our decreased 24 capital plan is being offset with the retirement board expense. Happy to answer any questions, Dr. Childs.
All right. Any questions from the committee? Comments? Any further information necessary? Okay, I think we can take a motion for this as well to recommend approval to the whole NCAB. That would be motion number, what is this? 2 or 3, 4, 5? Okay.
Number 5.
Can we pull that up, Bill? Motion number 5?
Want some water, Joe? Want some water? No.
Thanks.
Okay. I will make a motion, to approve the fiscal 23 fourth supplemental expenditures and transfers in the amount of $53,100.
Second.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, any further discussion? Let's roll call vote. Eric,
Aye.
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, that's a unanimous vote. Okay, our next item is the Chapter 35 letter from the county commissioners to the registry. Could we, do you have anything on PowerPoint on that? Or I think we should just make sure we review that for a second for everybody. Do you have anything up to put up on the screen about that, or should we just review the letter? Did everybody get the letter?
We have the letter.
Yes.
it can be
Okay.
presented.
10
Let's
minutes.
just review the letter so that everybody sees the issue. Okay. Make sure everybody is all working from the same page. Okay. I'll give everybody a minute to just review the letter. Okay. So it seems to me like the issue here is a question of what should be the response.
Well, I'll chime in on this. I mean, obviously that I was here for the last situation with the legal fees, and I think the NCAB was very clear to the registrar that this is not to happen again. And obviously it happened again. Obviously we have to pay our bills. So, either way, the vendors that are involved here should not be affected by this at all. Where that money comes from should come out of the register's coffer somewhere. Where it comes from specifically, I leave that up to the powers that be as far as the accounting office and treasurer's office. I guess what I would suggest is, outside of sending him this letter, there's not a whole lot that we can do, so to speak, as far as, he's an elected official. He's at the same level as far as elected as the commissioners. However, I think he needs to be brought to task on it one way or another. So what I would suggest is maybe we have a conversation with our legal counsel, because I believe this case is still pending. And, as much as the registrar is kind of pointing fingers at the commissioner's office and the NCAB for not following rules and not following letter of the law, here's a perfect example of him breaking the law to serve himself. And I think maybe I don't know if there's a bargaining situation that Attorney Lopez can use to say, look, the respect is not there. He's not doing what he's supposed to be doing. Outside of the letter, there isn't really, I don't know that there's anything else we can do short of issuing a second letter from the NCAB as a whole, telling him that this can't happen again. But, this is a second strike, so to speak. So I may be rambling here a little bit. I just am not sure. I guess my whole point would be to have a conversation with Attorney Lopez and say, look, here's proof that, he might want to hold us to task for everything. And he doesn't like the way we interpret things. But here's a situation where he's clearly breaking a Mass General law for his own purposes. And without an explanation on what that was due to, it's hard for any of us to look at it and not, and just kind of sit back on it. So,
Does,
Barbara?
Eric, I agree 100% with what you just said, but has he indicated any reason why this happened?
that's kind of where I was heading with this, Barbara. So thank you for asking that question. But yes, has he answered for this? I mean, he's gotten this letter on March 1st. Has he mentioned it at all? Has he spoken to the commissioners? Has he come before the commissioners to be brought to task on it?
And Barbara, are you
Joe.
suggesting an explanation for why this happened?
Yeah, well, yeah, I
What-
think we need to know why. I mean, yes, it could have just been a mistake. That would be not good, but that's the best thing. But, was this deliberate like what it appeared that the legal fees were last year?
Okay, all right, so
Carol,
that
Charles.
would be one of the questions we could ask
Matt.
Attorney Lopez also. Okay, Joe?
Madam Chair, yeah, if I could, please. I think
Yep.
that if we could recognize through you, Director Cronin, to give some more narrative to this, because this was deliberate. And I think Director Cronin will be able to show the deliberate nature of this.
Okay.
From my own perspective, the funding in question was not in his budget as of July 1. He knew it was not in his budget as of July 1. And this was done deliberately. It was done really to fly in the face of our previous admonition. And I mean, I have opinions of how we may want to go on this, but I don't know for the other members, perhaps if Director Cronin could kind of give a little timeline on how this all went down, I think they'll be able to better understand the deliberate nature of these actions.
Okay. John, can you do that for us?
I'll be happy to.
Okay,
The visual prompt, and in the interest of your time this late afternoon, here's the issue. The documentation associated with this matter started at the beginning of fiscal year 23, as Chairman Reardon just indicated. The root cause, Ms. Earl, is related to a contract for consulting with a group called the Carroll Group that had been awarded in FY22 to the Registry of Deeds and funded in FY22. That particular contract had language in it that stipulated it could be terminated after the first year without fund if it was not funded. And as Chairman Chairman Reardon just mentioned, it was not funded in FY23. I have a list of emails, letters, and correspondence with the Register, primarily between August and September of 2022, where he protested the actions on this particular contract, the interpretation of the language of the contract. He claimed that it was an active contract and he had access to it. I wholeheartedly disagree with him. This matter has been reviewed by council, incidentally, and notwithstanding the status of the Carroll contract and the dispute between the registry and my office over the active nature of it. The fact is that in August, services were rendered by the Carroll Group. Services were rendered in September by the Carroll Group. In both cases, a purchase order was not signed off on by the county for those services to be delivered. During this time period, the Register was aware of the dispute over the funding for this contract. And so it became clear that there was a knowledge that there was lack of funding, but there was an action to secure funding without a purchase order. And as the letter indicates, that is a clear violation of Chapter 35. It wasn't done in 1 month, as one would suggest would be a one-off. I think Ms. Searle indicated it could be an easy mistake. It was done in 2 months, back to back. And it was during this time period that, as I mentioned, we were accumulating quite a lot of dialogue on this matter, which I won't drown you with right now, but council agreed and the commissioners as well, that the simple fact is it's a violation of Chapter 35. And in my world, it's a correctable moment. You know, it's a breakdown in your internal controls. You have to call attention to it. You have to point it out and acknowledge it and speak to ways to improve your controls over that going forward. And I think one of the things the commissioners acknowledged as well as council is that this was not a one-off. This has to be related to the incident that occurred in FY22 and the legal bills under similar circumstances. So compelled by that pattern, I think it's important that the county recognize that, you know, some folks need a reminder that we're not an open checkbook. We're an organization of financial controls. We handle the most precious entity in public government, and that's the taxpayers' dollars, and we're beholden to that. So I think the letter is a manner to alert the Register of the law in this case, and the belief that going forward, we need to be an organization that recognizes these controls.
Thank you. That's very helpful.
And if anyone wants to read my binder, it's a public document anytime.
Thank you. Okay. Comments from the Finance Committee?
It's kind of frustrating that there isn't really, that this doesn't trigger something more than what has been done. And I'm not criticizing what has been done, but, you know, it's really too bad that there isn't, I mean, another step that's more forceful than what has already been done. Because if it's being done deliberately, you know, I mean, I realize he's an elected official. I get it, but it's just very frustrating.
To answer the question, I don't think I did, by the way. Since the letter was sent on March 1st, I think, we have not heard from the Register. No response.
Madam Chair, if I could.
Please.
Okay. So as chair of the advisory board, and I'm speaking as chair of the advisory board, and what I'm asking of the Finance Committee is your indulgence and your support to move in a strategic direction to address this. So first and foremost, I'd like to be sure that we have all of this information correct. And both you, Eric, and you, Barbara, had said, well, could it be a mistake? You know, could it, an irregularity? Is it? And I don't believe that it is. However, what I'm thinking of doing is perhaps appointing an ad hoc committee to go to the register and say, hey, walk us through all this and how this happened. And then take a look at all the information we have and decide from there, what options do we have? Because we do have the option, and this was attempted in 2019 and 2020, to go to the state auditor and ask for a comprehensive audit, up and down. Let's see all this. We have the option of getting a private audit and going out to bid and bringing somebody in to take a look at it, if that's necessary. But I think it should start with an ad hoc committee, because this has been a problem now, not only in terms of the Chapter 35 issue, but also in terms of what I've described as obfuscation and distraction with regard to his own budget, with regard to the 64D account, with regard to a lot of things, employment. There are a lot of pieces there that have been obscured from view through smoke and mirrors, and a deep dive perhaps on the advisory board level, and then coming back and reporting to the finance committee and then to the full advisory board about next steps would be something that I would be interested in moving forward on. But I throw that out there now, saying that, recognizing I want to do it with your support. And I think that would say a lot, to say that the finance committee agrees that more should be looked into, and that the chair could appoint or should recommend that the chair appoint a committee to do so. But I'm throwing that out there to you now.
Okay. Eric, Barbara?
I would support that. I mean, I think that's a good first step. I just want to make sure that there's a second step.
And I agree with everything Joe said, and I just want to clarify, I am in no means do I think this was an accident. I'm on the same page as Joe, with judging from what happened last time, and knowing the man and how much control he has, there's no way he didn't know this. So I'm gonna throw that out there. But what I would suggest is, and I agree with the steps that we're talking about, but I would probably start with a formal request to the registrar to put in writing, send a letter to the finance committee. We can ask for the finance committee, we can ask from an NCAB board as an explanation, a written explanation on what occurred and why it occurred, before we jump to the next level, because we don't know what his answer is. I mean, you know, it could be, it could very well, I seriously doubt it's valid. However, we should at least give him the opportunity, because if we are going to go take this hand it to the attorney and say, here, you know, here's something else to build our case, I think we should have something tangible. And if he's not responding to this letter at all, then that tells me he just has a disdain for the county. And maybe we all need to band together, the commissioners, the NCAB, and the finance committee, and say, look, all three of these boards want a written response on what happened before we decide where we're going to go and look at our options. We should know what our options are, but I think we really need to have something, a response to the county letter, you know, to say, and I mean, look, you know, we all know that Bill is not short of sending things out and putting things in writing. So, you know, this is a perfect opportunity. It's right up his alley. Sorry, I'm not trying to be flip about that. I'm being honest about it. You know, the man who put together a stack like this of emails to send out to everybody, we're asking him for a one-page explanation. I don't think that's unreasonable.
So if I could summarize, I'm hearing several things. Joe, did you want to reply to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of go back and I defer to Director Cronin through you, Madam Chair, but I believe that the register has indicated why he felt he had the right to do this, which clearly was wrong, why he felt he had a contract, which was wrong, arguable. But at the end of the day, the bottom line is the money was not in his budget. It was never there. So he clearly knew if he chooses not to respond, that's his choice. I don't think, frankly, at this stage in the game, where this is the second time this has happened, that we wait for a letter from him. I think we just go and do what we need to do to protect the taxpayers' money. I think that's our charge. I think that's what we should be doing. And I think, with your support, I'd say we just move forward.
Yeah, but I guess, Joe, what would we be moving forward with? That's my point, is that, what can we, we can't sanction it. I mean, I don't know what our options are.
I think I just iterated a couple in terms of audits, but I think one would be a deep dive to make sure that we have everything correct as we see it. And that would be an ad hoc committee to do it, to report back to the finance committee and to the full board. And then if it appears, as it does, that there are irregularities there and that he has willfully gone against the law and the really accounting controls that should be in place, then we should request an audit and take a look at everything from top to bottom, from how he takes in revenue electronically, by check, whatever, how top to bottom, because there's clearly either an inability or a willful disregard for financial management. And we can't have that. We've exposed it on different levels over the past few years, but now it's time to really dig down deep and let's get this together and make him recognize that, all right, we do this audit, there are ramifications to that. Ramifications that could include his own professional situation, political situation, and we have to address that. We have to do what's right for the people of the county.
Okay. All right. If I hear this correctly, I'm going to just try to summarize what I'm hearing here. For some sort of a motion. For the finance committee to recommend to the whole NCAB that we first make sure that we understand the NCAB's fiscal oversight responsibility, which is different from the commissioners. And we should be very clear about what our role and responsibility is in this kind of a situation. And maybe that's a conversation with Scott Lopez as well. Maybe that's just to be very clear. The second thing is to, with or without, a letter to the register asking him why it happened, to explain it by a date, give him a date and time he has to respond by, with or without that, to then appoint an ad hoc committee that Chairman Reardon, you would appoint from the NCAB to meet and investigate with the register what is happening over there and to understand what are the fiscal controls in place or not in place at the registry, with the outcome of that potentially being that we would then move to do something to more formally assess what the fiscal controls are at the registry. And we have several things here that are concerning us. One is the Chapter 35 letter problem, the Chapter 35 violations. The second one is the loss of the fees, the Brown Tech fees. The law, there's still no explanation for why that really happened, right? Why we went from 800,000 now to 100,000. And then really, we don't fully understand why things like this are happening. So there's how the flow of the financial transactions happens there. It's not clear. So in summary, that's what I'm hearing. I don't know if does that sound right to people? Are we missing something in this?
Sounds good to me.
Right. Yeah, that sounds right.
Does that sound right?
I'm with you.
Okay, Joe,
Yeah.
does that capture what you're getting at also?
It does. It would provide me with support to go to the entire advisory board and, speak to this issue and how we're addressing it, and appoint a committee to report back at the next meeting, the meeting after this, the May 17th meeting.
Okay.
And then we can take steps from there.
Okay, all right. Can I ask you, John Cronin, is that correct? Is there anything here that we're leaving on the table?
I don't think so, Dr. Childs. The letter from the commissioners kind of lays out the concerns that they had through council.
Yeah.
I guess the only advice I would always give the chairman of the advisory board is that whereas there is pending litigation, Joe, always check with Attorney Lopez before any actions are taken to make sure that you're in good stead, and all clear.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay. So at the risk of not being able to put that into a complete motion, I think
Yeah,
the motion is to recommend to the advisory board that there be a response. And the
Yeah.
response include a legal opinion about the role and responsibilities of the NCAB, an opportunity to hear from the register in writing about what happened, the appointment of an ad hoc committee by the chair of the advisory board to further investigate as appropriate what's going on, including looking at the whole fiscal policies and transaction processes at the registry, and then to recommend further formal follow-up as action steps to that, which could end up being a recommendation of an audit. Can we move that?
I will
Yes.
make the motion of everything that you just said with one addition to request that the county director check with Attorney Lopez to see if there's any what are just to make him aware of what's going on with this.
Okay, all right, that's a good friendly
Okay,
amendment.
John?
Eric, I'd prefer that not be in the motion. That's more an administrative task.
Okay,
I think
All right.
functionally that contact should be made through the chair of the advisory board.
all right, then I'll
Okay.
pull that part back. So
All right.
I will make the
All of us, and I'm sure he'll be aware of it, but functionally it should go through the chair of the advisory board. But I hear
Okay,
you.
I apologize, John. Thank you.
That's all
Then, Madam Chair, I'll go back to the original motion that you made of all that stuff you said.
Okay, good, okay,
I'll second it.
okay, thanks, Barbara. Joe, are you okay with that motion? Did we get everything in there?
Yeah, I think that it captures the essence of it.
Okay,
I think will work.
okay, all right. Okay, I guess we need to take a roll call vote on that motion. Eric,
All right,
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay.
Okay.
All right. John, anything else on the chapter 35?
No, ma'am.
Okay. All right, we're moving right along here. I think the last thing is the minutes.
No, actually, I have one item if I could.
Okay,
Okay.
what did I miss? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have an agenda that includes approval of the FY review of the FY24 county budget. We do have a ratified registry of deeds contract today.
Okay,
The commissioners ratified it. The union ratified it earlier. Just gonna give the date on March 22nd. We do have a motion in the packet, Dr. Childs, and we believe that because it's an FY24 element,
mhm,
what we're asking for is favorable action on the upcoming contract. It's interesting, we discussed whether or not the finance committee and the advisory board need to approve it now because there isn't any supplemental requests associated with it. But we understand from council that the Department of Revenue likes that certain oversight bodies like the advisory board approve contracts, even though there might not be any spending in a given year. So I can give you a brief update on what this contract included. We're very grateful. This is the last of the 3 contracts to be approved. It will go until June 30th, 2025, retroactive to July 1st, 2022. It has identical COLAs to the other 2 contracts. That is 2.75 in 2023 fiscal year, 2.5 next fiscal year, and 2.25 in 2025. There is we achieved some language improvements in the contract, beneficial to both parties, including vacation carryover, grievance arbitration procedures, job posting and bidding. One of the items that the union really desired was access to improved training for certain employees to receive cross training in other areas of the registry. That was achieved. And we got some good information, good language back on the workers' comp side. The last item is we are prepared to pay a stipend in year 3 of the contract. I'm going to correct myself. It's not a stipend. It's known as a technology proficiency payment of $250 per person. This is language that we think will help energize the staff at the registry to achieve proficiency across the board for technology, especially as Ms. Searle and I were talking earlier about some looming Brown Tech improvements down the road. We think that it's beneficial to both sides, both incentivizing through funding in the last year of the contract, the need to improve and obviously access technology for the betterment of their performance and duties. So overall, very happy with this. This was 13-10 vote held recently, approved today by the commissioners. And if it's okay with your committee, I would ask you to look at motion number 2, Bill, on the slide deck that I put up earlier. for Dr. Childs and the Finance Committee's consideration. Happy to answer any questions. Also happy to answer any questions that you may have on the contract too.
Questions?
Madam, yeah,
Yes,
Madam Chair, through you. John, did you say a 13-10 vote?
It was, yes.
What was the controversy?
I was not in the room. I don't know.
Jeez. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
okay. All right, other questions or concerns about this contract?
No, ma'am. I will, yeah, Madam Chairwoman, I will make a motion
Okay,
to approve the funding of the memorandum of understanding between the Norfolk County Commission and the members of the American Federation of State, County, and Municipal Employees, Council 93, Local 2417, Registry Unit, the terms of which shall take effect on July 1st, 2022, and expire on June 30th, 2025, and to authorize the expenditure of certain expenses to be paid from the existing fiscal year 23 registry salary appropriations for the cost of the COLA for registry union workers.
Second,
thank you, Barbara. Okay, let's do a roll call. Eric,
I,
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, all right. So Director Cronin, have we covered all of FY '23 and FY '24?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now I think we are onto the minutes. All right, the minutes of the open meeting of January 4th, 2023. Did everybody get those?
sure did. I will make a motion to approve the minutes of Wednesday, January 4th, 2023 at 5:30 PM.
Okay, is there a second?
Second,
All right, thanks, Barbara. Okay, no further discussion. Let's vote. Roll call. Eric,
I,
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
aye.
and the chair votes aye. Okay, thank you. The minutes are approved. Okay, any other topics that we didn't anticipate we need to talk about?
No, ma'am.
Okay, now we are scheduled to meet prior to the NCAB, the full meeting next week. The NCAB meeting is at 6, am I correct about that?
Yes,
And it's at the Aggie?
it is.
Okay, and we were scheduled to meet at 5. I think we should keep that on the schedule. Although, just in case there's something that we have to do before that meeting at 6. But I'm wondering, John, if there ends up not being any business, can we cancel that meeting at the last minute? Is that a hard thing to do with the open meeting law?
I'll defer to Bill Buckley on that.
Bill, is it possible to post it and then if we have to cancel it, cancel it?
I think that's fine.
yeah, what
Okay.
we can,
It's the negative is fine. It's the affirmative, having a meeting without 48 hours notice, but you can cancel a meeting for lack of need.
Okay,
yeah,
so
we can
Go ahead,
always,
Eric.
we would just say that that day, if we decide we're not gonna go, we just say lack of quorum, we cancel the meeting.
okay, because I don't, there's no point in us trying to be there all at 5 if we don't have to be, is what I'm
Right.
thinking.
Yeah.
But let's, Bill, I wonder if we could go ahead and post a meeting with, really, it would really be the same agenda, I think. It would only be if there were updates to that agenda.
We can talk about that later in the week if you'd like, Doctor.
You
Yeah,
get some time.
but we probably should post it just in case something comes up at the commissioners' meeting that we want to talk about before the 6 o'clock meeting. That's really why we did it.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, and then if there's just nothing, we'll just cancel it and let everybody know we can let you know by email that we're canceling the meeting, so you don't have to hustle to get there.
Sounds
Perfect.
good.
All right,
Yeah,
okay,
Bubbling Brook no longer has hot dogs, so there's nowhere to go to kill time in between.
okay, sounds good.
No more
Yes.
hot dogs?
Are they open now, the Bubbling Brooks?
Yeah,
So they're not doing food anymore. It's just gonna be ice cream. It's
Oh, terrible.
Joe Randon, these always go back to food. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Well, you want the maximum number of people there, you gotta provide food, it's simple as that.
We're
I
getting
would-
cookies next
I'll
week,
take a
but-
motion to adjourn.
A motion,
Second,
All right, all in favor, we have to do roll call. Eric,
I,
Joe,
Aye.
Barbara,
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you so much, everybody. Have a good
Thanks.
night.
See you all next
Thanks,
week.
Beth. See you
Yeah.
guys.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
John, thank you for everything.
Pleasure, guys. Take care. Have a great night.
Thanks.
Bye.